So we had a very interesting weekend, especially in the state of Virginia, with Governor Northam coming under a firestorm of criticism for allegedly having a blackface yearbook photo when he was in medical school. Uh, Being the fact that this is my first podcast and first episode out there, this isn't typically the type of topic that I want to cover because to me it is small and minor. This is a state issue, in my opinion. Why and how this became a national issue is what angers me. But I completely get it because we're in the midst of a presidential election in 2020, and Virginia is a very important state. So that's the reason why. Had it not been an election year, especially in one in which President Trump uh, invokes such ire and discontent from the other side, uh, this would have been a state issue, if it would have been a state issue. And that's where it rightly belongs. But we do live in a world of 24/7 news. We don't like to focus on the big pictures. That's why I don't care for this story. The amount of attention that it has received is what infuriates me because this country truly has serious issues that need to be rectified. Do we talk about them? No. Uh, we look for the easy stories. We look for the things that are shiny and we make a big deal out of them and we beat them to death for the 24-hour news cycle. And if we can get a couple days out of it, they'll do it. If we can't, they'll move on to the next one. Case in point, most recently was the high school incident with the uh, Make America Great hat, the high school students from Kentucky, and the other protests that were there. Uh, Very similar cross currents in these two stories as far as I'm concerned. Again, focusing on minute topics that should not be national news at all. But getting back to the governor of Virginia, is blackface tolerable in 2019? Certainly not by most measures. It's not something I endorse. It's not something I would do. I would consider it tasteless. But it doesn't mean that it's deserving of the outrage that it has received. My opinion, there are more important things to be focusing on. If you focus on such instances, on such quote unquote controversies, I think you're rather small minded. Everybody's had their struggles. I understand the race aspect of all of this, but at the same time, I don't. Let's get over it. It wasn't too long ago we just celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Did he not tell us to judge one another not by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character? I know I'm not the only one that heard that, and I know I'm not the only one that follows that wisdom. The race hustlers out there that exist have done more damage to the black community than anyone that I can truly think of. Now, that doesn't negate the atrocities that happened under the Ku Klux Klan or a whole bunch of other bigoted, hated groups that direct their hatred towards minorities. But race hustlers always go to race. The last thing that we're supposed to look at. We're supposed to look at the actions. It's easy to say no. It's easy to give up. It's easy to drown yourself and bring others down with you in self-pity. To say that my ancestors struggled. My ancestors were slaves. We all have ancestors who struggled. Many of us still struggle today. It's not easy. But the last thing any one of us should do is drown ourselves in self-pity and make nonsense And to me, it's false outrage over somebody putting shoe polish on his face 30 some years ago. The outrage that came pouring in, especially from the Democratic presidential nominees, came fast and quick. It came hard. It's no surprise. It's easy to condemn something like this. It's easy to call for somebody's resignation. It's much more difficult to say this happened 30 years ago. We all do dumb, careless things at some point in our lives. We all do things that we might not be proud of. But we can forgive and forget. Or at least we can find the better angels within ourselves and at least forgive. Now, if the people of Virginia think that this is truly an issue that warrants the resignation of a governor, so have it. That's the beauty of our republic. I would just ask people who think such, especially those who voted for him, what made you vote for him in the first place? Does the fact that he put shoe polish on his face 30 years ago, does that mean that he is incapable of leading the government of Virginia? You might say yes. You may say yes, and I get that, and I can understand that to a degree. I don't agree with it. I am certainly no supporter of Governor Northam, especially given his views on late-term abortion, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the man was elected to lead the government of Virginia. He was a lieutenant governor. He's been in the public eye for many years. This never came up. It was never an issue. So why the outrage? Because we live in an oversensitive society, that's why. Period. End of story. Everybody's offended. I'm offended by a lot of things. What does that mean? Does that mean I get to cry, scream, kick, and everything just gets changed for me because I'm offended by somebody's actions? That's not how it works. I'm damn near ashamed to be in this country. For all the good and great things that this country has accomplished, and there's definitely an undercurrent of things that are not worthy. Things I would not want my name and don't want my name attached to. But I have the right to voice my opinions. I have the right to vote. I have the right to make a change. I have the right to leave if I want to. And so does everybody else. I think we need to take a chill pill. I think we need to step back. Everything has become politics. Everything is boiling over. This is not the fault of one man, Donald Trump. It is not the president's fault. This has been coming to a boil for years. That's what this program is all about. Talking about those issues, talking about solutions to those issues. From a political standpoint, from a social standpoint, from an educational standpoint, and from an economic standpoint. The goal of this program is to always find the truth and to voice my opinion, which you will hear loud and clear. I'm not stubborn, but I'm not completely elastic either. When I voice my opinion, it's because I've given it thought and time and the respect it needs before I voice it. I wish more people did the same. It's a virtue to listen for a few minutes before you start spewing your ignorance. We all do it. I just wish there was a little bit less of it. So Governor Northam, to his credit, in my opinion, is not resigning, at least not yet. I wouldn't have resigned. I would have called focus to the issues that are facing the people of Virginia. I would have said, that's why I am your governor. This was 30-some years ago. If you don't like it, don't vote for me in the next election. But I have served the people of Virginia in the past. Clearly, the people of Virginia, at least the majority of them, thought he did a good enough job to earn the title of governor. Stand your ground. Stand your ground. I'm not saying that as a cynical position. For the purpose of letting everybody know, I'm a libertarian. So I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm not a wingman for the Republican Party, not by any stretch of the imagination. But I say this because I believe it. If I was the governor of Virginia, I wouldn't be resigning. I would, again, tell the people of Virginia why I ran to be the governor of Virginia, how I am tackling these issues, how something I did 30 years ago has nothing to do with who I am. Nothing. It was stupid. I made a mistake. Now, his communications team, his PR team, the way he handled everything was terrible. That was me in the picture. It wasn't me in the picture. I did actually put blackface on, but it was just a little bit of shoe polish when I was dancing as Michael Jackson, and I happened to win that contest. Okay, Governor, congratulations. Not great at the communication. People of Virginia have a problem with their politicians lying. Well, get in line. They all lie. They all lie. What haven't you learned? We have, at the federal level, a $22 trillion debt. That's a lot of broken promises. And that's a lot of promises that never should have been made that are being attempted to be kept. But I digress. Many more podcasts are going to focus on the big pictures because that's what this podcast, that's what this channel is all about. Big picture. Big picture. We're not going to get down in the weeds, but I feel that it's important because this is early on in this show to explain to you that these are not the types of news stories that are going to get a lot of attention from me because they don't deserve it. We're better than this. We can focus on the important things that affect all of us. This is a state issue. This is for the people of Virginia to decide. If they want the man to resign and put enough pressure on him, they can do so. If the state assembly or the state delegation wants to enact articles of impeachment or however the Virginia Constitution delegates that, let them move forward. This is not a national issue. It only is because of 2020 presidential election. That's it. End of story. Now, the drama continues. We have the Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, who is now under accusations of sexual assault. Now, the Lieutenant Governor comes out and denies these accusations. However, he does admit that it was a one-night stand some years ago, but that it was 100% consensual. Now, we don't have the full story here. We don't have the full facts. So I'm not going to speculate as to whether or not Lieutenant Governor Fairfax is guilty of such accusations. However, the important question is, what do the Democrats now do? How do they handle this situation? Because we just learned not too long ago during the Senate confirmation hearing of Judge Kavanaugh that the accuser is always to be believed. Me Too. Me Too movement. The woman is always to be believed. Or if it's a man, I suppose, he's to be believed if he is the accuser. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Democrats, the masters of hypocrisy, are going to dance around this one. I haven't seen Senator Blumenthal. I haven't seen or heard Kamala Harris. I haven't seen a whole host of Democrats come out and say, well, Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, you did it. You did it. I mean, we blamed Judge Kavanaugh for being a gangbanger. You must have sexually abused this woman simply because she said so. I haven't heard that yet. I don't expect to hear that. Why? Because he's a Democrat. Because the Democrats are the masters of hypocrisy. They do not care. If the ends justify the means, that's all they care about. In any situation. That's why they're always back and forth. Somebody could make a career out of showing the hypocrisy back and forth. And the mainstream media couldn't care less. They don't call them out on it. They don't pressure them. But the second that a Republican is hypocritical, and believe me, they are too, they're down their throats. You had a man and his family, Judge Kavanaugh, now Justice Kavanaugh, get dragged through the mud by United States senators. Serious allegations. No proof. None. And most of these people in the Senate and in Congress, for that matter, are lawyers. No evidence. He said, she said. Case closed. I never believed that woman for a second. A second. If she was asked a question that didn't relate to the case, she spoke as if nothing happened. She spoke very calmly, plainly, as if she was having a general conversation, I would assume, with one of her best friends. Put it in the context of Judge Kavanaugh, tilted her head, gave that doe-eyed impression, looking over her lenses, glasses lenses, and softened her voice. Yes, Senator, that did happen. Outrageous. And of course, after Judge Kavanaugh became Justice Kavanaugh, all is well in the world. She's done. She's not pursuing any other actions. It's over. It was a political stunt. It was a political stunt. It's going to be interesting to see what happens if and when President Trump gets another nomination to the Supreme Court, because we don't know the full story of what's going on with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I wish her and her family all the best in her recovery. But the woman, I believe, is 84, 85 years old. She is not in good health. Will Trump get another Supreme Court nomination because she retires, resigns? Or, of course, in the worst case scenario at this point, she should pass away. What will happen to that confirmation hearing? What happens if he nominates a woman? What will they do to her and to her family? Will they care? How nasty could that get? I guess time will tell. Time will tell. So, we've covered enough with this Virginian blackface story. It's small potatoes, in my opinion. It shouldn't be covered. But it's a national story, again, because of the presidential election 2020. And if President Trump can win Virginia, well, then the Democrats are in a lot of trouble. Because the Democrats, maybe you can say they'll steal Pennsylvania back, maybe they'll get Michigan back or Wisconsin back. But if they should lose Virginia, then they're in some trouble. Now, I also think that a lot of this came about because of that abortion issue, and maybe I'll do another episode on that, which was just completely disgusting. But actually, as I sit here and ponder it now, I will do another program with that being at least one of the topics, simply because it has a lot of moral and ethical questions that we as a people of this country have to face and have to answer seriously. Um, so I'll save that for another time. The other topic I do want to bring about today is President Donald Trump and the State of the Union, which will be on February the 5th. Some of the topics that I think the president will discuss, and I do think this is going to be probably a rather long State of the Union. I know his State of the Union address last year was, I think, one of the longest, if memory serves me correct. And of course, with all of the applause lines, I mean, these things can go easily an hour and a half and potentially 2 hours. There's definitely a lot to discuss. I think the president will do his best to strike a chord of unity and trying to bring everybody together the best that he can. The question will be, how effective is he? And will he be able to stay the course, or will he go off on a tweeting storm the very next day and set somebody off on the other side? We will see. I hope that's not the case. I hope that Congress can come together, strike a deal, keep the government in operation, get true border security, give the president adequate funding for the wall. I know this will be very difficult for the Democrats to give in on, given what happened previously, the whole government shutdown debacle. The ball truly is in their court now. Trump did reopen the government, and now he has asked the Democrats to come over in good faith, and as they said they would, open the government, and we will discuss border security, which definitely meant that they would consider funding for the wall. Whether they come to the $5.7 billion that the president has requested, we'll see, but we only have a couple weeks to get there, and I have no doubt that the president will use a national emergency declaration if the Democrats don't come over and give him something. What would be a happy medium if they were to come and offer $3 billion? I doubt that would be enough from the president. I'm sure it would have to be a lot closer to the $5.7 billion, but that's my judgment and opinion. Again, time will tell. But the wall is definitely going to be discussed. I think the president will go into further detail of some of the things that don't get a lot of media attention, such as the amount of drugs that does pour into this country on a daily basis. Even Senator Kamala Harris, during her interview of William Barr for Attorney General, stated that this country has a drug problem. It has an opioid crisis. Well, Senator Harris, a lot of those drugs come from the southern border. If a wall can start to mitigate the amount that flows into this country, I think that is a proper solution. Is it the solution? No, it's not, but it's definitely part of it. And it seems reasonable to me. We do have a drug problem in this country. Very much so. It destroys individuals' lives. It destroys communities. It destroys families. It takes a toll on the economy. We have to do something about it. I think a wall is definitely a part of the solution. You want the drones, you want the technology, I'm all for it. But a wall is part of it. Other things that the president, I think, is going to discuss that, again, doesn't get a lot of media attention is the human element of it all, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking. I don't think a lot of Americans know that even takes place. Definitely not to the degree that it does in this country. The United States, because of its wealth, or at least one of the reasons I would have to link it to, is the biggest market for sex trafficking. Because people in this country evidently can afford it. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole in this episode, but evidently it is a major problem. People are unaware of this. Can the president shine further light on this issue? Because the Democrats are always saying that it's a humanitarian crisis. Well, I don't know what is a bigger humanitarian crisis than dragging women and children hundreds, if not thousands of miles across dangerous terrain with men who physically and sexually abuse them, only to bring them across the border where they are further sexually and physically abused. But of course, the wall is immoral. That's, I guess, perfectly fine, but the wall is immoral. I haven't heard anybody say, let's tear down the walls that are there. Just can't add a little bit more. A few hundred more miles of wall is immoral. What's there is perfectly fine, somehow. Okay? Again, back to the hypocrisy, back to the inconsistency. Don't understand it, but that's how they are. It's all political. It's got to tone it down. This is common sense. Your job as a congressman, as a senator, is to protect the rights and to protect the borders of this country. All of these other topics, ridiculous. Put them aside. Put them aside. We give too much power and authority to these people. They want it, they seek it, and this is what they do with it. $22 trillion in debt. Nothing solved. Don't get me started. Other things that the president will talk about is undoubtedly he will tout the quote-unquote strength of the economy. I don't think our economy is that strong. Again, this podcast, this channel is very much in tune and in alignment with discussing the economy, data, investment strategies, the stock market, and the like. So I will get to that further in subsequent discussions. But he will tout the economy as being great, one of the best ever, yada, 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 as he does. Unemployment is at lows. It is at some numbers that we haven't witnessed in a very long time. That typically, unemployment is a lagging indicator. Usually when it gets this lower to its lowest point, a recession or some pullback does come into picture in the near term. We'll see what happens with that. But he will definitely discuss the economy, unemployment. He will tout his trade deals that he is in the midst of making or has already made. He will call on Congress to enact those trade deals. He will discuss their virtues, no doubt, pat himself on the back as much as possible. And that's fine, that's his style. He will discuss, I think, in some terms, the U.S.-China trade deal and the progress or lack of progress that's being made, because we have a lot of stories and tweets that come out as far as whether or not there is a deal or if we're miles and miles away. So maybe he can provide some more concrete clarification on that, and we'll see what happens there. Another point that I believe the president will discuss will be his upcoming meeting with the North Korean leader. I think that's important. I don't believe that the president has gotten enough credit for extending an open hand to the North Korean president and starting discussions. We've had 50 years, over 50 years, since the end of the Korean War. The North Korean people suffer a great deal and have for those 60 years. You look at the stats, you look at the differences between the North Koreans and the South Koreans. There's a difference in the average height of the men and women simply because of the malnutrition that is experienced by the North Koreans. So I think there is definitely a lot of potential with North Korea. If we can bring these people out of that darkness, if Kim Jong-un is willing to negotiate in good faith and really be a man of his people, he can be the man of the hour. I don't necessarily know if there will be reunification between the North and the South, although I do think some years down the road, I think that will be a goal. I think that will be a possibility. It won't happen overnight. It will take a good while, but I do think that is an admirable goal, and I do hope that that's what happens. We need more peace in this world, not violence and talk of violence, talks of war. We don't need it. It's 2019. It is 2019. We don't need to be barbarians. We can have civil discussions, and we can solve problems. Believe me, we can do it. So that'll be a big point in the president's speech, I believe. I at least hope it is, because it's important. It is an important geopolitical story, and it can have huge ramifications for the world for many years to come. I also think, as far as in the vein of overseas and geopolitics, I think the president will discuss some progress occurring in Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, and the situation in Venezuela. A lot of drama taking place in Venezuela. We'll see what happens. It's always amusing to me, although I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, because we have an investigation going on of the Russians interfering in our elections in 2016. Yet the Americans, we can do it no problem with Venezuela. I don't endorse Maduro and his regime in Venezuela. It's just always amusing to me that the Americans and the quote-unquote West can interfere in everybody else's elections, and that's not a problem. Some other things that he may discuss if he's trying to reach across the aisle might be infrastructure. I don't know how the hell we're going to afford it, because we already have near trillion-dollar deficits and a supposed strong economy. If you have a strong economy, you don't have near trillion-dollar deficits, period, end of story. So how are we going to afford infrastructure that I can assure you will cost trillions, plural, to get it up to the standards that it should already be at right now? Of course it's not, because infrastructure is typically not a sexy investment. A lot of it's underground. A lot of it's in places people never see. So what? We need it. It's the foundation of a strong, vibrant economy. That's part of the job. Of course, we put it off, kick the can down the road like we've done with many, many other things, and now it's coming home to roost, and now it's going to cost us a lot more than what we would otherwise have had to pay for it. So we'll see if that can be done, because I do think that there is definitely a consensus that could come around and support true infrastructure projects. Again, the question becomes, how do they afford it? How quickly can these projects get started? How effective will they be? And lastly, the president may bring up more tax cuts. I'm sure he will talk about the tax cuts that were enacted with his plan a couple years ago. He may announce other tax cuts that he wants to implement. That may be another place or area of consensus for it to target more of the middle class. I know there is obviously a lot of talk right now amongst some of the Democratic contenders for the presidency, as far as what their tax plans are currently or are going to be, or the direction that they're going. They are insane. They make no sense. They're not fit for a free market capitalistic society, but that never stopped them before, so I don't expect it to stop them now. But I'll get into that in many other subsequent discussions, because we're going to have a hell of a fun time discussing those things over the next 2 years, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a circus. These people are going to be at each other's necks. This is going to be entertaining, to say the least. I'm looking forward to it. So, with that, I do believe that will be most of what the president talks about. Of course, he will have somebody in the balcony sitting with the First Lady Melania Trump. Um, what type of political points he's going to try to make, I'm sure it'll have something to do with the border and perhaps a veteran. Those are usually things that can get standing ovation and some sympathy and empathy. And presidents always do like to put on a show. They're politicians. You can't blame them. That's what they do. It makes for interesting television. But with that said, thank you for your time. We'll catch you next time. Godspeed.